Well, somehow, the donation goal for Megane Melee was met. So, as promised, here is a behind-the-scenes video. For look ahead, there's a fun little detail that I wanted to mention that I'm not sure if a lot of people really noticed. If you look back at Megane Melee 3, the ending scene where had text that said "See you next year," in the background you can hear a very quiet, like, choir melody, and that was actually a early version of the opening of melody for Look Ahead. That is something I've always kind of wanted to do as a composer. It's kind of inspired by how Smash Ultimate had like a choir version of Lifelight in the teaser trailer. So this was kind of the same idea. And as for the song itself, more importantly, the lyrics. The main idea behind the lyrics was, as the name implies, to look ahead into the future and not get caught up in dwelling on the past. And of course, this can go in multiple directions. For some people, it may be clinging to their glory days. For other people, it may be dwelling on the past and like getting caught up overthinking about past mistakes. So the main message of the lyrics for Look Ahead is to don't get too caught up in the past and move ahead into the future and try and accomplish great things that you would be happy being remembered for. Speaking of the lyrics for Look Ahead, another thing that you may notice is that for the chorus, the lyrics all have references to the main games of the event. In specifics, shadows block my path as a reference to the shadows in Persona. So as I pray for victory, just being a reference to Nikke since it's part of the donation incentives. Focus your sight before we end this holy night is kind of two references to Tsukihime / Melty Blood / Nasuverse stuff. Focus your sight is kind of a sort of reference to Shiki's Mystic Eyes, and before we end this holy night, with holy night being a reference to Alco's game, the Witch on the Holy Night. And then of course, Hold On to Hope, with holds just being a reference to the mechanic from Dead or Alive. For a Perfect World, with Perfect World being part of the subtitle for Akatsuki Blitzkampf's sequel, and Ein's Perfect World. But there is one very noticeable case where this is different. It is kind of an open secret that originally Fatal Fury City of the Wolves was planned as a main game for this year, but it was replaced at the last minute with SamSho due to some information I found out surrounding one of the characters on its roster. And I just didn't feel comfortable spotlighting the game with that in mind. However, this was so late into development that there is still a version of the opening that uses clips of Preacha. Now, speaking of the chorus, the part halfway through it where a second brass instrument plays at a higher pitch, an early idea was for that part to play a much more direct reference to the My Messiah leitmotif, where it would go like, but it didn't sound great when played together with the other brass part, so ended up having to cut it. And the biggest struggle with making the opening was without a doubt the part with the lyric "Before we end this holy night," where Shiki and Shiel's auto combos were supposed to hit in time with the clicks in the music. I kept having the situation where it would look perfect in the editor, but when uploading it to YouTube, the timing was thrown off just enough that it was noticeable. Due to that, if you compare the individual upload and the version used in the stream version has slightly better timing during that scene. The vocals were once again commissioned from Paloma Camaro, who also did the vocals for Fight for Four Eyes, the opening for Megane Melee 3. There are actually two versions of the vocals, because the first take she sent me, it was good, but it had some minor issues that I wouldn't have wanted in the final song. Mainly just the timing for some of the earlier lines, and there was a small one-word error.
Time to move, but you're feeling stuck. Trudge around, but you can't keep up.
But she does offer retakes, so I was able to ask for a second take, and that's the version you hear in the final song. Although I will admit I do like some parts of the first take quite a lot. Namely the way she sang the ending.
So before we're dead, find the strength to look ahead.
Also, I was originally planning to actually sing some harmonies for the chorus. And then I tried it, and it sounded horrible. My bedroom is not built for recording vocals, clearly. But overall, I am happy with how both the opening and the song came out. And it was a pleasure to work with Paloma again this year. In terms of the individual game openings, the one for Melty Blood type Lumina was the first one that I did. And I have to say, I think this is one of my favorite openings that I've done for Megane Melee. Racing to the Light is one of my favorite songs to come out of EVO's openings, and so I was very excited to use it. Although this opening also presented a unique challenge due to the fact that we are currently playing through Arcwade's route of the Tsukihime remake on DWR. So I didn't want to show anything too spoilery, mainly in case Johnny was there during that segment, since, while me, Edwin, and Alm know a varying amount of the major Tsukihime spoilers, he has been almost completely blind during our playthrough. So I wanted to make sure that anything we either haven't seen yet, didn't appear at all, or was out of context enough that I wouldn't give anything away. So some of the major decisions that I had to make was to make sure this character's name didn't appear for a single frame, and to try and limit any appearances of the culprit, who we have yet to meet. Although he does appear a few times, but one of them's a silhouette, and the other is something I actually kind of want to talk about. And coincidentally for this next part, I'm going to issue a spoiler warning for not just Remake, but Tsukihime as a whole. So skip to the timestamp on screen if you don't want to hear that. In the part where I used the clip from Lumina's opening where Shiki and Roa crash, I added a little blink and you'll miss it Easter egg where the moment they clash, for a single frame, the face of true Shiki appears. This is a reference to how, for those who don't know and didn't heed the spoiler warning, Roa, who was originally a member of the church, has been reincarnating for centuries, and the Roa that you see here is actually possessing the body of the true Shikitono. Not this Shikitono, this guy, Akiha's real biological brother. Another fun little thing that happened while making this was I made an intentional decision to use this clip from Remake's opening when the word beautiful is said, since Arcwade's true form is described as beautiful by all those who witness it, and needless to say, my local Arcwade simp appreciated it. Also, a funny little thing about the production of both this and MM3's Melty opening. Despite the fact that both use clips from the Shiel route opening, I've never heard the song from it. I've always just wanted to keep it so that my first time hearing it would be when I finally play the game myself, even before the localization was confirmed. But considering the first time will probably be when we get to the Shiel half of the DWR playthrough, I wouldn't even hear it since I'd have to mute it for copyright. But that's just what I've always done, whether it makes sense or not. For Persona 4 Arena Ultimax's opening, the decision on the song to use for this changed multiple times. Some of the other options included Reach Up to the Truth and Dance from P4D, but I decided on time to make history since it is also used for the instant kill attacks. Which is also why when the chorus kicks in, it plays a bunch of clips of some of the different IKs in the game. And despite it having been in Megane Melee 1, this is the first time it's appeared since I started making openings for specific games, so it follows a similar format to other first-time games, where it shows every character with their name, if possible, before going into more action-packed segments. Another thing that you may notice is that in a lot of the clips, you see Mitsuru on the receiving end of a combo. This is because, as I mentioned during the event, I started learning Mitsuru while gathering clips. So I would basically just fight each character, and whenever something cool happened, I would clip it to use in the opening. The opening for SamSho has unexpectedly become the most viewed of the openings this year. And honestly, I understand. I think objectively, this is probably the best one. This opening was originally supposed to use the remix of Banquet of Nature from Smash Ultimate, but as soon as I heard Revive the Soul, I just immediately knew that it had to be that was the one to use. You may have noticed I put a little filter on top of the clips of Haomaru from the in-game opening. And that was done with the intention to try and make it look like an old samurai movie. But whether that idea was executed well is up to you. Also, you can definitely tell which clips from the character story mode that I recorded myself and which ones I took from a video, based on the button prompts on the top right. If they show Xbox button prompts, that's me. One of my favorite parts of this opening is right before it goes into the chorus when Haomaru is swinging his sword. The slash transitions into Jubei's super really well. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it just looks really satisfying, and I'm quite proud of that. With the shots of Warden and Baiken, the idea was to show the guest characters right before the intensity picks up. And then I realized I'd forgotten one of the guests. With the openings, I try to make sure most of the major characters appear, and that includes guests. But at no point does a particular character appear in this opening. Characters Gongsung Lee from Honor of Kings, a literally free DLC character, but I swear I just keep forgetting she's in the game and not in a good way. But anyway, once the music starts getting more intense, it starts showing some of the more bloody supers of the game. One of my favorite shots during this segment is definitely Hisame shielding himself from the rain of blood with his umbrella. I think it came out really well, especially when paired with the music. Also, when it shows the logo, you may notice the PlayStation, YouTube icon in the bottom right. Unfortunately, since the trailer is age restricted, my YouTube downloader wouldn't work on it, so I just had to screen record. For Akatsuki Blitzkampf, part of the opening was kind of already done for me, because the first segment of it is pretty much just the in-game opening, just sped up and cut down. A recurring theme that you may notice in the opening is the battle between Akatsuki and Melee. Not just because they're my mains, but also since Akatsuki is the main character and Melee is the main antagonist. One idea that I had for the opening was for the final shot before the logo to have Akatsuki and Melee facing off, and then freeze frame as the sprites of N-Eins and Melee Anastasis join them, with N-Eins basically being Akatsuki's successor and Anastasis being her next reincarnation. I thought it would have been a cool, kind of symbolic thing to show. But then I remembered once again that since Perfect Well Anastasis is arcade only with no up-to-date ROM dumps, there are no sprite rips of Melee. Finally, DOA6's opening. Being my main game, this is always the opening I both look forward to making and simultaneously dread, since I want to make sure I do it justice. DOA's openings are also the hardest ones to choose songs for, since the game doesn't really have many vocal themes, and half of the openings I could have pulled songs from used copyrighted music. But I ended up using False Fate from DOA5 Story Mode. But I was hesitant to even make this decision for a while, because the song slows down halfway through and only about 1 minute and 20 seconds of the song would have been usable. But as I was making the openings, I realized that they all are usually around the 1 or 2 minute mark anyway, so... And I'm happy that I did, because I'm proud of how this one came out. The scene showing the DOA2 cutscene of Ayane preparing her fireball, which inspired her break blow in DOA6, is one of the many cases in this year's openings where I show the past version of an attack that translates into the most recent version. This visual motif also happens in the main opening, tying back to the concept of remember the past but move into the present and future. There was actually an earlier version of this opening where, during the part with the lyric, "Reminisce only when I meet death," it showed footage that was a nod to the Evo Japan incident. Since, as a lot of people have said before, this was pretty much the moment when they killed DOA6's chances of being seen as a serious fighter. In my mind, to truly pay tribute to something you love, it's good to acknowledge both the good and the bad. As much of a disaster as this was, it will forever haunt DOA as a franchise. It's been 6 years since then, and the phrase core values has become too embedded in FGC lingo to fight against it, so all we can really do is laugh. But as I thought about it, it might have taken people out of it, and at worst, some people might have even found it disrespectful. So instead it was replaced with a callback to DOA5, when Phase 4 nearly kills Bayman, leading to its title, The Man Who Overcame Death. Also, the clip of the Azuna drop at the end might be the very first clip of me performing it, like, on the internet. I've actually learned how to do the Azuna drop a while ago, but since I don't really play Hayabusa often, it's never really come up. Now for the standby screen VGM. This was actually almost not even ready for the event. Wasn't finished until just a few days before. The chorus references the bass line of My Messiah. You might have noticed that there is a reference to Look Ahead in the bridge section.
It's okay to look back on all the memories you've made before.
This was actually supposed to be a placeholder, but I ended up liking it. In regards to the ending and prologue scenes, I originally planned on doing a lot more, like, story scenes, showing different characters interacting, but of course I didn't have enough time. Some of the skits that I had planned involved Shiel making curry and Yosuke messing it up, something between Kasumi and Rishang, and more. The main conflict would have been Mikuli leading the Shadows to raid the Colosseum, mentioning that they would find something that would make both their dreams come true. A very similar concept to what Coil mentions in the post-credits scene. Another idea for a closing scene I had would have shown Naoto coming across someone that looked just like her. She questions what's going on, like, "Oh, this can't be a shadow, what's going on here?" The doppelganger messes with her for a while, but eventually drops the act. And it would have been revealed to be Tsumugi Shirogane, who points out that they had the same last name, but eventually Naoto just dips, not wanting to deal with her. I also probably could have used this as an opportunity to shill DWR, like, "If you enjoyed the banter of the host and our lovely hijackers, keep an eye out each Saturday for their weekly stream," or something along those lines. As fun as that would have been, even if I did have time, it would have bloated the ending a bit too much to have that. To have that, the farewell scene, and the post-credit scene of Nico and Coil, that would have been a bit too much. The text box was made in Ren'Py by making the background a green screen, with the characters either being existing portraits or screenshots with the backgrounds removed. In the case of DOA6, I used my green screen mod. The post-credit scene's main purpose was to tease ARMS as one of the main games for next year. And because I know someone's gonna ask if ARMS even has a glasses character, this is probably an even bigger stretch than Skullgirls was during MM2, because Dr. Coil is pictured wearing glasses in her arcade ending, or Grand Prix ending, whatever you want to call it. But the main reason I decided to do it was because it was the donator's choice of last year, and I was half expecting the same to happen this year, but it was Smash instead. Plus, ARMS is a bit of a significant game for my channel's history, since the reason I started streaming was because I was active in a Discord server that did events for ARMS, and I wanted to archive those. As mentioned in the description, the Prologue scene uploaded later was meant to establish the quote-unquote lore, so to speak, and kind of make a narrative out of the events of the previous years. But due to time constraints, I only had time to make either that or the ending before the event, and the ending took priority. The track that I made for it features several leitmotifs, with the first, of course, being a variation of the My Messiah motif. The second, appearing when it talks about Neon, is something that would literally only be caught by either the biggest Nikkei fans or those who watched my Goddess Fall motif update video. Because it's a reference to the song from the concept trailer, which, as I said in that video, I believe is probably an early version of the game's title theme.
Codename Lappy. Connect.
The third, appearing when it talks about the regulars investigating what's going on, references the swing version of A Reference to Despair, which is always used as the starting stream BGM. Finally, when talking about Coil interrupting MM3, it plays a variation of her theme, name redacted. I may end up making these prologue segments a yearly thing, since I do want to expand on these story segments for next year. Hopefully I will end up being able to have time for that. For the Eyecatchers, I don't really have as much to say, but there are a few interesting tidbits I can bring up. Melty's second Eyecatcher, which uses an excerpt of Actor's Anteroom from Actress Again. It was actually an idea that I had for one of last year's Eyecatchers, but since Type Lumina was the first game last year, I only needed the one and it was already made. Now, something you might have noticed about the SamSho one is that in the details video, the one that played as the Up Next Eyecatch was switched to the later one in the final event. And that was because I thought the more triumphant sound of what is the final Up Next Eyecatch would have been better fitting for when we're about to switch to SamSho. Speaking of SamSho, something that I did for the Up Next one was I used a clip from one of the previous games, I'm not 100% sure which one, of the announcer saying Samurai Spirits, which is the game's Japanese title.
Samurai Spirits.
I originally planned to do this with the announcer for SamSho 2019, but unless I missed it, it seems like the announcer says Samurai Showdown, no matter the version of the game. For the first Akatsuki Blitzkampf Eyecatch, on the later screen I used this art of Mikuli Anastasis, which is taken from official art that was made to thank the crowdfunding backers for, I think it was 700,000 milestone? This art also includes Inazuma and Valkyrie, who are the other two bonus characters from crowdfunding milestones. For the first DOA6 one, which focused on Nico, the voice line at the end is from Venus Vacation. Unfortunately, since the fighting game side of the franchise didn't get an English dub until DOA Dimensions, there's a very limited number of voice clips of characters saying dead or alive in English, and even less of them are usable in this context, so I'll probably have to pull from Extreme every time. The second one uses the home screen sound for DOA Dimensions of Kasumi saying dead or alive, Dimensions.
Dead or alive.
Which I'll probably have to use this every time, since, again, not only are there limited voice clips, but also Kasumi's the GOAT.
Into the future, oh, shadows block my path. So as I pray for victory, focus your sight before we end this holy night. Hold on to hope for a perfect world. We can't outrun the circle of time. So before we're dead, find the strength to look ahead.